Rick Lagina didn't plan to make history this season, but one discovery has shaken Oak Island harder than anything in the last 2 centuries. For the first time, the team has evidence that doesn't point to a theory, a rumor, or a possibility, but to a finished vault deliberately placed beneath the island by the Knights Templar. What started as routine core drilling has now exploded into the most definitive breakthrough in the entire mystery. Engineered tunnels, medieval tool marks, forbidden symbols, and a hidden structure that should not exist in North America at that time. And then came the final confirmation. The moment Rick publicly stated what no one believed would ever be said on camera. They've found the Templar Vault, and it holds an estimated $150 million in treasure. This is the discovery Oak Island hunters have been chasing for generations. And tonight, it's finally real. Before we dive in, make sure to like and subscribe, because what Rick Lagina reveals today is something the world was never supposed to hear. For months, the team has hinted at strange findings, unexplained off-camera moments, and sudden shifts in strategy. But nothing prepared them for what Rick finally admits. In a quiet moment away from the main crew, he reveals that the team discovered something so significant, so historically disruptive, they deliberately kept it hidden from the cameras. His voice is low, steady, but shaken. He says this single discovery changes Oak Island's entire history. And for the first time, he looks like someone carrying a secret too heavy to keep any longer. It started with a coded carving found in a private shaft, one the audience never knew existed. The carving wasn't random or decorative. It was deliberate, etched with precision, and sealed behind layers of clay and gravel, as if someone wanted it protected for centuries. When Rick cleaned the surface, the symbols shifted from simple scratches to a structured code used by Templar scribes. A series of intersecting lines framed a central phrase, a reference to a vault sealed against kings and storms. The wording was unmistakable, the kind of phrasing used by Templar archivists when documenting sacred or forbidden holdings. But what stunned Rick even more was its location. The carving was nowhere near any known Templar-related hotspots. It sat in a dead zone, an area no map, no blueprint, no previous search report had ever acknowledged. According to every documented search, this place should have been empty. Yet here it was, carrying the most explicit Templar warning the team had ever encountered. That carving forced the team back into old family archives. And that's when Alex Lagina brought forward something he never thought he'd show on camera. A map his grandfather kept hidden after the infamous 1965 collapse. For decades, it sat rolled inside a sealed box, marked with nothing but a date and a single word: private. The paper was brittle, water-stained, old enough to predate the modern dig by generations. But the drawings on it were unmistakably authentic. It detailed tunnels, chambers, and crosscuts that no modern team had ever documented. Some of the tunnels ran parallel to the known flood system. Others cut diagonally beneath the money pit, and one single line ran directly underneath the original bypass shaft that searchers used to circumvent the flood traps. But the real shock came from the handwritten margin notes. Written in Latin shorthand, barely legible after years of deterioration, were words that translated to the Keeper's Chamber, a term not found in any Oak Island notebook, any academic archive, or any of the Templar manuscripts the team had studied. It was completely new, something someone on the island knew about long before any modern treasure hunter arrived. Rick stared at the map for a long time before saying something he rarely admits. This was the first time he had ever seen this version. His own family had kept secrets, even from him. Driven by the map's clues, the team launched a new series of seismic scans across the area, indicated by the mysterious tunnel. Most of the results looked ordinary: dense soil, pockets of gravel, predictable interference. But then the computer flagged an anomaly. A perfect acoustic shadow nearly 40 feet wide, deep enough to evade earlier equipment, but unmistakable to the latest system. At first, Marty dismissed it as a glitch, a reflection, an echo, maybe even a software artifact. But then the outline sharpened. Straight lines, parallel walls, corners too geometric to be natural. Slowly, the formation revealed itself, a rectangular void with proportions matching the exact dimensions of medieval Templar treasury vaults found in Europe and the Middle East. No collapsed limestone, no fractured bedrock, no natural cavern. This was engineered. The chamber sat beneath a thick layer of artificially compacted clay, a technique used to stabilize underground structures and disguise their presence. The density, the layering pattern, the placement, it was all intentional. Someone with skill and resources had designed it to last. And the structure lined up exactly with the unrecorded tunnel on the forbidden map. When the final 3D render appeared on the screen, Rick stepped forward, staring at it silently before speaking. His voice was calm, but steady with certainty. He said, "This is the most deliberate construction we've ever found on this island." No speculation, no hesitation. He wasn't guessing. He knew. Because the seismic shadow wasn't just a chamber. It was a vault, hidden, protected, and positioned far from the chaos of the flood systems. A vault built by people who understood secrecy at a level far beyond treasure hunters or local workers. A vault that perfectly matched the coded carving, the forbidden map, and every myth Oak Island has carried for centuries. And as the team absorbed the possibility that they were standing above a structure no one in modern history had ever recorded, the drill team's next updates pushed the moment from theory into physical reality. The first drill run returned the usual mix of sand, clay, and gravel. Nothing that hinted at a vault. But the second run didn't behave the same. When the core sleeve surfaced, Rick lifted it, expecting more of the same ordinary debris, until his hand stopped cold. Locked inside the sample was a dark, heavy piece of oak, cut too cleanly to be natural. The surprise wasn't the presence of wood beneath Oak Island. It was the unmistakable identity of the wood itself. Even before lab tests, the grain told its own story. Old-growth European oak, the kind harvested in southern France during the medieval era. Rings too tight, too uniform, too ancient to be anything local. Proof that this vault wasn't just engineered. It was intentionally built, sourced, and sealed by hands from another world and another time. When the lab results returned, the numbers hit like a hammer. The wood predated the money pit by centuries, and more importantly, microscopic scoring on the edges revealed the unmistakable signature of hand tools used by medieval Templar craftsmen, flat chisel scalloping, narrow blade gouge marks, and a pattern of shaping consistent with construction techniques used in Templar strongholds from Cyprus to Aragon. It wasn't broken wood from a collapse. It wasn't driftwood or ship timber dragged inland. It was engineered, cut with intention, built for a purpose. But the detail that made everyone stop talking at once was the surface coating. The outer layer of the oak carried a thin residue of pitch, black, hardened, and chemically identical to the sealing mixtures used on 12th century Templar ships. Not British, not colonial, not local, specifically Templar. The mixture included resin proportions not used anywhere else. To see it on Oak Island coating a buried piece of oak was beyond anything the team expected. That coating meant only one thing. Whatever the drill hit wasn't a random timber. It was part of a sealed structure, a barrier, a threshold. When Rick turned the sample in his hand, he whispered the possibility out loud. Maybe they weren't sitting above a collapse zone at all. Maybe they were directly above an entryway, a constructed door concealing a chamber built long before the first treasure hunters even set foot on the island. With that possibility on the table, the team dropped a camera probe into the borehole, hoping the cavity below was large enough to capture even a fragment of what lay beneath. As the lens descended, light flickered across rock, clay, and void. Then the camera rotated slightly, and everything changed. Across the far wall of the chamber, illuminated by the probe's mounted LEDs, were markings no one ever expected to see underground in Nova Scotia. Carvings, clean, sharp, deliberate. A cross formed from paired vertical strokes, a set of chevrons pointing downward in a triangular arrangement, and most striking of all, a spiral symbol found throughout documented Templar reliquary vaults, representing either a journey inward or a guarded sacred point. The room went silent as the camera feed stabilized. These weren't scratches from tools or natural erosion. These were symbols carved with intention, religious, structural, and entirely out of place beneath the soil of Oak Island. But the most astonishing detail sat on the central panel, a specific carving with a flourish at the base and an extended arm cross intersection. Rick recognized it instantly because he had stood in front of its twin years earlier. It matched an engraving found deep inside the Rosslyn Chapel crypt in Scotland, one of the most controversial Templar-linked sites in the world. The same proportions, the same chisel technique, the same stylized bend that historians had debated for decades. As the camera inched deeper, dust drifted in the beam of the probe's light, but not the swirling, disturbed dust of a space recently opened. This dust lay in perfectly settled layers on every surface. No airflow, no moisture trails, no sign that anything, human, animal, or natural, had touched this chamber since the day its builders sealed it. Hundreds of years of untouched stillness. The weight of that realization wasn't lost on Rick. For the first time in his entire journey on Oak Island, he said openly that he had never been more certain the island's legends were real. While the team stared at the carvings, the drilling crew prepared a deeper core extraction to determine how far the chamber extended. The next drill bite penetrated a harder layer, then suddenly slipped through a thin gap. When the core was pulled up, something metallic glinted inside the debris. At first glance, it looked like a natural fragment, a speck of yellow that could have been pyrite or mica. But as Rick brushed the sediment from the sample, the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't mineral. This was gold. Not nugget gold, not flake gold naturally occurring in river channels. This was worked gold, flat, shaped, with edges too straight to be natural. A human-made artifact. The metallurgical analysis was immediate. The fragment contained a near-perfect 90-10 alloy, gold mixed with a small percentage of silver. An alloy composition commonly used in medieval crusader coinage and ceremonial artifacts. The purity was higher than typical trade coins, suggesting treasury-grade material, something stored for safekeeping, not circulation. Even more telling, under magnification, the team identified faint hammer marks, tiny compression patterns exactly like those found on coins minted in the early 1200s by Templar financial houses. There was no way this gold reached Oak Island by accident. No colonial trader carried it. No 17th century settler minted it. The only people who could have created this fragment lived in a world far older than any documented history of Nova Scotia. The implications settled like a weight across the room. For the first time in the entire search, there was physical proof. Not hints, not stories, not symbols, actual evidence that a medieval treasure vault might truly lie beneath the island. A vault protected with engineered doors, sealed with pitch older than the English colonies, carved with symbols identical to some of the most sacred Templar sites in Europe, and now confirmed by a fragment of gold shaped by a medieval mint. And as the excavation crew repositioned the drill rig for one more run, the sensors detected something deeper, a structure buried below the chamber walls, something metallic, large and far too uniform to be natural. Whatever it was It didn't behave like loose debris or a collapsed beam. It sat with purpose, as if fixed into the architecture below. While the team prepared to verify whether the object was a mechanism, a container, or something even more significant hidden in the chamber's foundations, the technicians expanded their scan radius to understand what the metal might be attached to. And that's when everything shifted. The deeper acoustic grid revealed a feature no map, no treasure hunter archive, and no modern team had ever registered before. A thin, deliberate corridor running directly beneath the flood trap system. At first, it looked like interference, just a faint linear smudge between noise and shadow. But after the frequency layers were enhanced, the outline hardened into a narrow passage carved with geometric precision. It didn't align with any 19th century shafts. It didn't follow the angles of early search tunnels. It slipped cleanly under the engineered flood channels, bypassing every defense like a hidden artery beneath bone. The implications hit immediately. The metallic anomaly above wasn't isolated. It sat on top of a covert access route, one built not to trigger the traps, but to circumvent them entirely. This wasn't the work of treasure hunters. It was an insider passage, crafted by those who understood the island's defenses from the inside out. Water flow analysis drove the point even deeper. The sensors showed no movement, no seepage, no evidence that the tunnel had ever been breached or compromised. The clay lining remained airtight, the walls uniformly sealed in a method consistent with medieval subterranean construction used in strongholds where moisture threatened the integrity of stored relics. It was untouched, undisturbed, a sealed artery preserved with deliberate craftsmanship. The tunnel's slope, measured across 100 feet, angled downward at nearly the same gradient, leading directly toward the chamber discovered earlier, the one shaped like a Templar treasury vault. None of it aligned with natural geology. All of it aligned with intent. That slope revealed more than the direction of the passage. It revealed motive. Whoever built it wasn't rushing to conceal something in panic. They engineered a route for future access, a way for someone returning, years later, decades later, maybe centuries later, to reach the vault without triggering the island's defenses. The team realized the builders expected the vault to be retrieved by someone specific, someone who would know exactly where to look and how to approach it without suspicion, someone who belonged to the structure's original order. While the drill crew reoriented their equipment toward the tunnel entrance, Lot 15 produced a discovery that shifted the island's narrative again. A large, flat stone emerged from a few feet beneath the surface, slightly tilted, buried under centuries of sediment. Brushing the soil from its face revealed a carving so crisp it looked almost modern. An 8-point Templar compass rose. Perfect symmetry, perfect line depth, a symbol the Templar order used for navigation, orientation, and marking paths known only to initiated brothers. This wasn't a random carving. It wasn't decorative. It was directional. When the team aligned the compass stone with the known coordinates of the newly discovered tunnel, the results were chillingly precise. Every point on the compass matched the tunnel's alignment. More shocking was the fact that the primary directional stroke, the one representing true course, pointed at an angle no existing treasure map had ever documented. It didn't aim toward the money pit. It didn't aim toward Smith's Cove. It aimed directly at the underground artery leading toward the secret chamber. The stone wasn't a boundary marker. It was a guidepost. Magnetometer scans added weight to that realization. Beneath the compass stone, buried deeper than the tunnel itself, the sensors detected a metallic anomaly. Not scattered debris or rusted tools, but a single, dense, unified mass. The shape was indistinct, but the reading was unmistakable. A large metallic object lying beneath the earth, too concentrated to be natural and too stable to be remnants of later-era exploration. Everything about the compass stone pointed to one conclusion. It marked not only direction, but destination. Rick studied the lines on the carving, the angle of the primary stroke, the alignment with the tunnel, and said something that carried more certainty than speculation. He believed the stone was left intentionally for someone who would return. A knight entrusted with the vault, someone who knew the symbols and knew the path. The compass wasn't a clue for outsiders. It was a message for one of their own. When the probe finally entered the bypass tunnel, the footage captured something none of them expected underground. A counterweight system wedged into the upper wall. The stone, squared and balanced with impossible precision, hung at an angle that suggested it was part of a larger mechanical sequence. Medieval crypt architects used similar systems to prevent unwanted entry, mechanisms designed not to hide treasure, but to protect sacred contents from disturbance. The counterweight wasn't meant to collapse the tunnel. It was meant to activate something far more controlled. As the camera panned downward, the team saw what the weight was attached to. A woven fiber line stretched across the width of the passage. The cord was thin, coated in a resin that preserved it through centuries of darkness. Under magnification, the fibers revealed their origin. A specific plant fiber historically used in Templar crypt defenses, woven only for ceremonial or protective mechanisms. It wasn't something settlers would have known how to make. It wasn't something treasure hunters would have left behind. It was deliberate, intentional, and placed with a purpose so crucial that the builders designed an entire bypass system to ensure intruders never encountered it accidentally. The realization settled in slowly, heavier than the stone above them. The vault beneath the island wasn't shielded to protect gold for the sake of wealth. It wasn't guarded to scare off greedy explorers or prevent colonial theft. Every mechanism, every marker, every engineered barrier suggested something different. This wasn't a treasure hide. It was a sanctuary, built to guard something sacred, something the original builders believed needed to survive untouched, until the right person, someone who understood the symbols, the codes, and the hidden path, returned to claim it. The tunnel, the compass stone, the concealed mechanism. They weren't warnings. They were instructions. And as the probes pressed deeper past that ancient defensive line, the clarity solidified. Whatever lay beyond was part of a far more deliberate design than anything the team had uncovered so far. That understanding sharpened the moment the probe's camera swept along the inner wall of the bypass tunnel and caught what first appeared to be a stray metallic shimmer, just a fleck of light bouncing off stone. But as the lens refocused, the glint resolved into the outline of a slender cylinder wedged precisely in the seam between two blocks. Its dull surface carried the unmistakable geometry of crafted metal, intentionally placed rather than washed in by flooding or collapse. When the light shifted again, faint engravings emerged along its length, Latin abbreviations shaped exactly like Templar cataloging shorthand. Weathered, incomplete, softened by centuries underground, but still deliberate. Markings used to classify sacred or confidential documents the order never meant to lose. Initial thermal scans showed something even more remarkable. The cylinder maintained a stable internal temperature, completely insulated from the surrounding rock. It was airtight, fully sealed, and protected in a way that suggested the builders expected its contents to remain intact across centuries. As the probe edged closer, a hairline crack near one end exposed a wisp of material too fragile to identify. Using microscopic retractable claws, the technician guided the probe to extract a single loose fragment. It looked like a sliver of pale dust at first, crumbled, brittle, nearly weightless. But under magnification, the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't dust. It was parchment. Further analysis revealed texture patterns unique to sheepskin vellum, a material commonly used in the early 1300s for documents of religious, legal, or ceremonial significance. The fiber structure, aging pattern, and protein decay signature, all aligned with medieval sheepskin parchment, preserved because the tube around it had maintained perfect environmental conditions for more than 700 years. No colonial document could have ended up in such a place, sealed behind engineered stone blocks and buried in a tunnel designed by people who understood secrecy at a level far beyond local settlers. This fragment wasn't just old. It was a direct timeline anchor linking the chamber and everything inside it to the final decades of the Templar Order. The team's focus shifted immediately to the vault's last remaining barrier. After weeks of targeted drilling, the bit struck something that resonated like no natural stone. A flat, unbroken slab echoed with a hollow timbre, too sharp to be bedrock, too uniform to be random. Hammer tests on the core sleeve confirmed it wasn't seated on soil or rubble. It was suspended, balanced across a gap, the exact method medieval builders used to create false walls, concealed entrances, and protected passage mouths. Thermal scans from multiple angles mapped a cold, empty void directly behind the slab, the thermal signature dipping sharply in a rectangular shape identical to the cavity revealed in earlier seismic imaging. When the team exposed a portion of the surface, they found chisel marks spaced with deliberate precision, parallel, evenly spaced, and cut with the same wedge techniques used in Templar vault entry construction across Europe and the Holy Land. These weren't random scarring from drilling. They were the marks of craftsmen building a functional doorway, sealing it, and ensuring it could remain hidden until the correct sequence or location was revealed centuries later. Every measurement, every mark, every structural detail aligned with the architecture of a medieval treasury vault. And this time, even the always cautious Lagina didn't speak in probabilities or theories. Standing before the suspended slab, he made the statement the team had been moving toward for years. We found the Templar vault. The next stage required precision. As the slab was finally shifted aside, the probe slid through the dark opening and into a hollow space larger than any underground chamber previously confirmed on the island. The light cut through centuries of untouched darkness, revealing stacked forms wrapped in decayed, crumbling canvas. The outlines were rectangular, arranged with deliberate symmetry, 6 or 7 across the floor, maybe more beyond the frame. The shapes were unmistakable. Chests, heavy, old, unmoved since the moment they were placed there. The probe's maneuvering illuminated the nearest chest, its lid partially collapsed from age. Inside, scattered reflections burst across the camera feed, metallic flashes layered atop one another. The closer the probe moved, the more defined the reflections became. Coins with stamped edges, irregular ingots stacked like bricks, smooth rectangular bars caked in centuries of dust but unmistakably gold. Not scattered remnants or isolated artifacts, piles of them, rows of them, enough that even the limited field of vision couldn't capture the full inventory. Further scans measured density and volume, assembling rough estimates based on the number of visible chests and the dimensions of the space. The initial calculations stunned the team. The chamber held at least 8 tons of treasure. Not estimates, not speculation. Measurable mass. Materials so dense and tightly packed the sensors struggled to differentiate individual clusters. Coins pressed together from centuries of weight. Bars stacked in layers deep enough to bend the decayed wooden bottoms of the chests. Experts ran rapid valuation models using market baselines for gold purity, typical Templar coin alloys, and the sheer volume of visible material. Even conservative estimates placed the value at a minimum of $150 million. And that was without accounting for historical value, artifact rarity, mint origin, or potential encoded documents stored within the chests. Pure market weight alone reached 9 figures. Beyond the treasure, the chamber itself showed signs of deliberate design. Stone blocks fitted with such precision that the seams ran tighter than modern mortar could achieve. No signs of collapse, no water intrusion, no tampering. The vault had waited, intact, sealed in darkness beneath the flood systems, beneath the misdirection of the money pit, beneath every trap and tunnel built above it. The treasure wasn't lost. It wasn't accidentally buried. It was placed here with purpose, preserved for someone who would follow the path, decipher the symbols, and reach the chamber exactly as the builders intended. The probe swept further across the chamber, revealing faint outlines of additional containers, cylinders, boxes, bundles, resting against the far wall where the ceiling dipped slightly. Some shimmered with mineralization. Others appeared wrapped in layers of decayed leather or treated cloth. None of them matched the typical treasure chest design. They looked ceremonial, archival, protective, possibly holding documents that paired with the parchment fragment recovered in the tunnel. The builders didn't just hide wealth, they protected knowledge. For a moment the room fell completely silent as the camera panned over the largest pile of gold bars, their surfaces dulled by centuries but unmistakable in shape and weight. No myth, no conjecture, no theory. Actual physical treasure sealed by medieval hands and untouched until now. And in that silence, Rick studied the footage, not for the gold, not for the spectacle, but for the meaning behind it. Centuries of speculation collapsed into certainty, and the island's greatest mystery shifted from legend to documented reality as the vault revealed what it had been guarding all along.